And we kick off this evening with a look at the cinema.
I'm not a complicated man. I like cinema.
It's beautiful, beautiful cinema.
Cinema history come to life.
I found my solace in the small cinema I went to every Thursday night.
I'm a professor of cinema.
I go to the cinema for the stories.
There was no competition between the cinema and seminar.
I mean, it's not within the realm of conventional cinema.
And now,
here's Pace and Johnson
for the cinema review.
It is Monday, June 8th, 2026, and thank you for joining me for another episode of Cinemaster's Reviews. I'm your host, Payson, the Cinemaster Johnson. We have an exciting week. We have an exciting show this week. We are going to be reviewing Masters of the Universe, the new adaptation of the beloved He-Man cartoon / toy line from the 80s, as well as Power Ballad, a new music film starring Paul Rudd and directed by John Carney. I say we jump right into our show. Show starting with the first review of the week. Masters of the Universe. This is directed by Travis Knight. You might recognize that name from several stop-motion Leica films, whether it's producing Coraline, directing Kubo and the Two Strings, as well as directing Bumblebee, probably the best live-action Transformers film. This film is an adaptation of the He-Man toy line and the cartoon from the 80s. Back then, cartoons were essentially just made to sell toys. This film opens on in the fantasy land of Eternia. It follows a young Prince Adam, and he is being trained to become the new king from his father, King Randor, played by James Purefoy, and his trainer, Man-at-Arms, played by Idris Elba. But one day Skeletor attacks, and He-Man is sent as a kid to Earth in order to essentially hide away from Skeletor, sent there with his sword. We flash back 15 years later in the future, and Adam has all of his memories of being from Eternia, and all he wants to do is get back to Eternia, trying to find the sword that would help him essentially make a portal to his fantasy land in order to reclaim his rightful place on the throne and defeat Skeletor, played by Jared Leto, I should say, as well as his evil henchwoman, Evil Lynn, played by Alison Brie, and to restore peace to all of Eternia. If that sounded really stupid and really just like out of this world, is because it is, as well as the original cartoon. I think if you go back and watch those original He-Man cartoons, while there's a lot of like rich lore to the world, where there's a lot of like backstory to all the characters, at the end of the day, this is a big dumb world where just big colorful things are supposed to happen, often just showing a giant orgy of just really cool stuff on the screen in order to entertain kids, as well as to sell toys. And I think the best thing that I can say about this movie is that it knows exactly what it wants to be and what type of movie it is trying to tell, as well as what type of story it's trying to tell. This is not a movie where it feels embarrassed to be associated with the He-Man property. It's not trying to change the property to make He-Man more serious. No, it knows it's a big, fun fantasy epic film, and that is what you are here to see. You're here to see fun action. You're here to see cool characters doing really cool things. Maybe like a very light story in there about Adam trying to reclaim and discover what it truly means to be a hero, what it truly means to lead people. But you're not here to be really like wowed in like this really serious tonal story. No, you're here for some nice big dumb fantasy, and that is what this movie gives you. It doesn't try to be anything else, and I really applaud Travis Knight for finding that blend of tone. Movie doesn't feel ashamed to be a cartoon. It's not like being a complete joke of itself. It's taking itself seriously to the point of like, hey, this is the world we are in. Adam is someone that is trying to get back to Eternia. He has this pet green tiger. He calls all these characters these really dumb names, and the reason why he calls them really dumb names, the movie actually has a really good explanation for that. But as I was watching this, I was just thinking like, wow, this could have been the most generic run-of-the-mill adaptation of a cartoon, and the movie completely avoids doing that by leaning in, being a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but not being so tongue-in-cheek where you're rolling your eyes and you're just thinking, if the characters aren't even taking this seriously, why should I take this seriously? And I think Travis Knight did a really great job of establishing that tone and just understanding the type of movie that he was trying to get made. Like I said, the movie opens with a big like battle in Eternia, and then Child Adam is thrown onto Earth, kind of similar to like if you've ever seen like a Superman movie that explains his origin story. It always ends with Krypton blowing up and Superman getting like shot off to Earth. This one kind of has the same thing where young Adam is just like is sent through a portal and just lands in the water, and then we flash back into the future and see how he is just trying to adapt to human life, but he also has all of his memories from Eternia. So he is like dedicated his life to trying to get back to Eternia to reclaim his royal title of king. That is a lot of fun. And while the movie takes maybe a little bit longer than you might think to get back to that fantasy world, I think the best points in this movie, the points where I was the most entertained, was when you were following Nicholas Galitzine as He-Man as Adam trying to find his way back to Eternia and in order to fight Skeletor. And while he's just on Earth, I think the humor here is really, really funny. One of the funniest bits is we know that Adam has a human job. We don't know the specifics of that job. All we know is that it's a desk job where he's supposed to do normal human work. And he essentially spends all his days just going on the computer and looking at Etsy listings to try and see if he can find the sword the sword of power, as he says. He knows it's a very generic name, in order to get back to Eternia. And there's this one scene where he's talking with the manager of HR. The manager of HR is like trying to keep a very like good smiley face and just saying like, hey, the fact that you are just spending your entire workday just looking at swords is scaring other workers. You're not getting your work done. And if you don't do this, we're going to have to fire you. And just that scene is really, really funny. The opening narration, it starts out as like, you've seen other fantasy movies that have this like big, long narration. You think about Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring, where it starts with Cate Blanchett narrating this big story and like setting up all of the exposition. You think you are getting that with the way Nicholas Galitzine is narrating the opening of this film. Without spoiling what the like twist is there, it's really, really funny. And I think the opening of the film where you are on Earth, I can't believe I'm saying this, that genuinely might have been my favorite part of the movie. I enjoyed when we went to Eternia, but when we are on Earth and we're seeing like eventually monsters from Eternia come down to LA in order to try and hunt Adam, really, really fun there. Eventually he meets up with Tila, played by Camila Mendes, who is one of his childhood friends, the daughter of Man-at-Arms, as I said, played by Idris Elba. And they eventually do get to Eternia. But that stuff on Earth, I was surprised how into the movie I really, really was. The entire cast, I think, is honestly really, really great. I think everyone fits their roles really well. If you're not familiar with the name Nicholas Galitzine, he was really good in Bottoms, which was this teen comedy from a few years ago. He played like the hunky football star, super muscular guy, super attractive guy, and is really good at playing like ditzy and just dumb really, really well. And throughout the majority, that kind of is what Adam is, even when he does get back to Eternia. He recognizes all these guys from the names he gave to them as kids. Like there's this guy that just has these mechanical fists, and he's like, "Oh, you're Fisto. You fisted people," and that's just how he like has his vernacular as a kid. He still has that. He plays his part really, really well. Camila Mendes does pretty good as Tila. Idris Elba is a lot of fun. We learn that Man-at-Arms has become like an alcoholic since Randor has been stripped of the throne, and he no longer has power, so he's just this prisoner. Alison Brie is having the time of her life as Evil Lynn. Her costume is maybe my favorite costume in the movie, where it kind of looks like Hela from Thor Ragnarok, but just not quite as over the top. But I cannot believe I am about to say this. The best performance in this movie, I kid you not, is Jared Leto as Skeletor. Now, part of that could be the fact that you don't have to see his face, but he and his voice is distorted to the point where you can kind of tell it's Jared Leto, but it doesn't quite sound entirely like him. But he is having so much fun as Skeletor. It's not like the high-pitched Skeletor you might think from the cartoon, but he has this big, deep, booming voice. He's not really taken seriously by anyone around him, and he doesn't really take anything too seriously as well because he knows he's the strongest person in the room. So even when even towards the end of the movie where he is fighting He-Man, he's just so like stronger than all the characters that he's just kind of having fun. And it's just weird to see a role where Jared Leto isn't taking himself that seriously, and it actually ends up working. I can't remember the last time I thought Jared Leto gave a really good performance. It might have been back when he did Blade Runner 2049 back in 2017, where he played the villain in that movie. And even then, he's not great, but he's not bad. He is genuinely really, really good. And I think it just helps the fact that the movie gives a lot of the funniest stuff to Skeletor. I don't want to spoil what happens, but the final fight involves Skeletor like taking He-Man back through like different visions of moments in the movie, and just all the things that Skeletor does there, really, really fun stuff there. So yeah, he's really solid. I will say, as I said, the movie knows what it wants to be. It's not trying to be this like ultra serious, ultra grim, dark adaptation of He-Man. That being said, I can tell certain movies that were a big inspiration for this film. I think one of those movies is Guardians of the Galaxy, and just sort of like the MCU style of putting a lot of jokes into your movie. And what I will say is, especially when we get to Eternia, I think maybe 40% of the jokes don't quite work, and I think it probably could have. I think the script could have used a little bit of just shaving down on the humor just a little. None of the jokes are really like laugh out loud funny. Like some of them get chuckles, but a lot of them just kind of fall flat. And I think there did just come a point, like towards the middle of this movie, where I think it was taking itself so unseriously, where even I was kind of having a tough time. Like it was starting to lose me in terms of the stakes, especially towards the end, where we are really starting to feel like, okay, He-Man and Teela really have to step up and lead their army in order to take back the throne of Eternia, and just still having the characters like joke and not taking anything too seriously. I think that I there did come a point where I was just like, okay, can we like raise the stakes just a tad? And I think it could have used like a little bit of a dial back on the humor to really make the other jokes stand out much better. Even if the jokes were like made me laugh even more, I think it would be a little more forgiving. The fact that even like the funniest moments really just kind of get like a little bit of a chuckle. I think it did leave a little bit to be desired from the humor, specifically when we get to Eternia. I think the major selling point of when we do end up getting to the fantasy world is it looks like a really, really cool fantasy world. Everything looks like not necessarily real, like you're looking at CGI, but everything looks pretty advanced. Everything looks very colorful. There is no sense of like, oh, I'm just looking at a gray hodgepodge of just stuff at my screen. No, everything is very, very detailed. Everything is really well lit, really well designed. And I think when it comes to a movie like this, that just you sort of see the director having you can tell when a director is having fun at making a movie like this, because so much stuff is because you just see all the little like creative aspects of it, and you can tell that Travis Knight definitely took a lot took the time to make the world of Eternia feel very detailed and very, very colorful. And I know that is one of the best elements of the movie that makes it seem so interesting, is the fact that that it does look so visually striking. Probably one of the worst things about this movie, and I think the reason why I can't quite say I like loved this movie, is the fact that the movie's 2 hours and 20 minutes, and it has no business being that long. I get that we spend a lot of time on Earth, but you could have cut down the time in Eternia probably by half and still had a really, really good movie. I think like the first action scene in Eternia is like this big escape from this prison. It might last like 20 minutes, and that could have lasted like 10 minutes tops. I think you could shave this movie down to be like an hour 50, and I don't think you are losing a ton. I get it. It is technically like an origin story, even though I think that makes it sound a little bit more boring than it is. But I don't think you needed to really like have it be this long in the grand scheme of things. But yeah, other than like the humor being like a little bit too a little bit too eye roll inducing at points, and the length being as long as it is, I didn't really have too many problems. I think it does hurt at the fact that I do think those are pretty big problems. But yeah, for the most part, I think Travis Knight honestly did a really well done did a very good job with this film. I think he's someone that obviously has played in the realm of movies based on 80s cartoons before with Bumblebee, and I think he is really good at adding the heart to when a story really needs it. I don't think this movie is quite as good as Bumblebee, but I do think he did about as good of a He-Man movie as you probably could have done. If I were to rate this movie on a scale of 0 to 10 videotapes, I'm going to give it a solid 7 out of 10. I think this is a good blockbuster. I think Nicholas Galitzine is very fun as the title role. I think the whole cast is great. I think it is just a big, dumb, fun fantasy movie that also isn't a complete joke. So you can you can still be invested in this world. The movie sets itself up at the end for sequels with the post-credit scene. Didn't do too well this week for its opening weekend, which is kind of sad because I do think this movie was pretty good. But I do hope we get those sequels because I think those teasers were pretty cool. If you want a fun blockbuster to go see that really feels like it's capturing the big scale of what we love from blockbusters, I think this is a movie that would worthy seeing in theaters. But I say we jump right into our second review of the night. That being Power Ballad. This is the 5th film from director John Carney. He is director of such films such as Once, Begin Again, Sing Street, Floor and Son. He's always famous for either setting his films in Ireland, which this movie is set in Ireland, or just making his movie about the music industry, which once again this one is. This one follows a lead singer of a wedding band by the name of Rick Powers, and he is performing at this wedding. And one night, one of the guests that is attending the wedding is a former boy band singer turned solo artist by the name of Danny Wilson. And they end up hitting it off at this wedding. Danny Wilson is played by Nick Jonas. And one night when they're just drinking in their hotel room, they end up playing some songs for each other, playing some unreleased stuff that they've been trying to workshop. And Rick ends up playing the song that essentially is his favorite thing that he ever wrote, but he hasn't released it to the public, and his band doesn't play it. So some time passes by. Danny goes back to America, and he ends up tweaking that song and essentially turns it into a giant hit that ends up getting his solo career off the ground. So now Rick, who has no real record of that song being recorded, has no proof as to the fact that he was the one that wrote it, now has to try to convince people that this song that Danny has now made millions off actually belongs to him, and see how that can really change his career as a musician and as an artist in general. John Carney is a filmmaker that I always find myself gravitated to, even though I can see that some of his films are a little formulaic. Once is a movie I absolutely love, even though I do kind of understand that at the end of the day, it is just sort of your standard romance film. I just think the music of that movie is so good. Sing Street kind of feels like your standard coming-of-age movie about this kid that goes to this new town, ends up falling in love with this girl, can't win her over. He ends up showing her that he's this really great musician. She ends up falling for him. They fall in love. They run away. John Carney doesn't really reinvent the wheel very well, but I think the way he crafts his wheel just makes it really charming, and it's a formula that always works for me. And what I will say is, while this movie maybe verges from that formula a little bit, it still is definitely on that formula. But like I said, it works for me, and I did end up liking this movie. I enjoy movies about sort of lost artists that don't really know where their career is going, where their life is going, and whether or not just the certain decisions they've made in their lives were the correct one, and whether or not if they could go back in time, would they do things differently. I think the character of Rick Power is honestly a lot darker than some of the other characters that John Carney has made. He's a character that when we first meet him definitely has a little bit of sadness and a little bit of darkness to his life, because you definitely feel that oh, he's not the happiest being in this wedding band. He doesn't hate it. He definitely enjoys performing, but he wishes that there was maybe a little bit more in life. And I like that John Carney's willing to go there with the character and is not afraid to make Rick seem a little bit unlikable. So specifically towards the middle of the film, when If I Could Write a Song Without You, which is the name of the song that Danny ends up stealing, or How to Write a Song Without You, which is the song that Danny steals. Rick just hates the fact that whenever he is out in public, whenever he's asked to perform at weddings, he's asked to perform that song. He always hears it, and you can see that it really, really weighs on him. And I like the topics that John is tackling a lot. Maybe not the most focused film of all time, but I do think it is well done, and I like the idea of people figure out their issues through music and just how art affects them and how it speaks to us in different points in our lives. I think probably the number one thing that makes the movie work as well as it does is Paul Rudd is genuinely giving a very good dramatic performance. He's someone that I think most people tend to really like, probably associate him most with comedy, whether it is Clueless, Wet Hot American Summer, Knocked Up, or the Ant-Man movies. But I think this movie, having him play a little bit more of like a real feeling character and just someone that just that Rudd is able to play, like being confused and but also being like that same charming guy that we always love really, really well. The big scene where he is in the hotel room with Nick Jonas, you see why this guy is so beloved by everyone. You see how just sort of like every decision he's made has sort of like led him to this place, but he still feels confident in the fact that like, no, I am happy that I did decide to go and start a family with my wife. I am happy that I didn't end up moving to LA and I didn't try to make my dream of performing at Madison Square Garden the priority over raising my daughter. And I think Rudd is kind of an underrated dramatic actor, and I think the movie asks just the right amount to make this a compelling character. Nick Jonas is also solid. I really like that John Carney was not afraid to make Danny an unlikable guy, like at all. Like I think that is maybe a choice that I'm still kind of struggling with, because I can see the movie trying to make you wonder, like, okay, you're supposed to sympathize with Danny, even though he absolutely does plagiarize the song, even though he does steal the ideas from Rick. I personally had a little bit of a tough time sympathizing with Danny that much, maybe because, without spoiling too much, he is not that apologetic for what he does, and he really does like believe that he didn't do anything wrong. And I felt that decision was very interesting. I'm not sure if it was that if it was that effective. And I think it maybe could. I wish we could have had maybe a few more scenes with Nick Jonas as Danny, just to really understand his psyche more and why he thought like, oh, stealing was like the only really real thing I could do. I will say his manager, played by Jack Rayner, if you saw Sing Street, he plays Connor's brother in that movie, in the running for one of the most unlikable characters in a movie. Just completely like dismissive of Rick and just wants to arrest him the second he makes his presence known to him. Plays the perfect record label owner really well, and just being like a complete douche and just complete like he only sees the world in dollar signs, and all the scenes he had, you just want to punch him right in the face. But yeah, like I said, movie does feel a little unfocused at times. I think the biggest issue with this movie is probably the ending. The movie's about like a little under an hour, 40 minutes. One of the rare movies I think we could have had like an extra 10 minutes to really flesh out not necessarily flesh out the characters. I think those characters are fleshed out enough. I think the movie ends in such like a, oh, it doesn't really have a conclusion. Just a character makes a realization, and then we have one little coda scene, and then it's just cuts to black, and that's really all we really get. And I think John Carney just may not have known how to really wrap up the story in a satisfactory way, because he is tackling two characters' point of views in a really unique way, and just really trying to tackle all these ideas. And I think the ending really, really falls flat for me, where it could have been a really, really heartwarming ending, but I just didn't end up feeling that much, because it did feel rushed towards the end. But yeah, those were really my only major complaints with the movie. I think the music in it is great. The big scene where Danny and Rick perform for the first time. They perform "I Wish" by Stevie Wonder. Really fun scene. How to Write a Song Without You. John Carney is a really, really great songwriter. I think all of his movies have amazing original music. Falling Slowly is genuinely like one of my favorite songs of all time. I think it's one of the best songs to win Best Original Song at the Oscars. And yeah, this song, it doesn't quite reach those heights, but I think it is a very, very beautiful song. And when you learn why the song was written and who it was written for, John Carney has a really nice twist in there that makes you recontextualize certain things that the movie has been saying. If I were to rate this movie on a scale of 0 to 10 videotapes, I think I'm going to go a little higher than Master of the Universe. I'm going to give it a 7.5. This is not one of my favorite John Carney films, but I think it does get the job done, and it is a very enjoyable time. Really great performance from Paul Rudd. Has some really nice, really interesting things to say about certain characters of like what it means to pursue a career in the arts, what it means to pursue a career in music, and the sacrifices that we make, and you have to take certain big risks in order to truly make a name for yourself. These are the sort of mid-budget movies I wish we got more of, and I would highly recommend you go see it in theaters. If you can't, see it as soon as you can. But thank you all for watching this week. Remember to like this video and subscribe to the video store. It helps grow our channel a lot. Next week, I'm going to be reviewing Disclosure Day, shaping up to be one of the bigger movies of the summer. Obviously, this is Steven Spielberg's newest movie about aliens. I believe his first alien film since Close Encounters of the Third Kind, so I'm super excited about that. As well as one other review, either The Furious or Stop That Train. Gonna see what I can see. But thank you all for tuning in to Cinemaster's Reviews, and as always, watch more movies.
And the award for most vapid film review of the century goes to...
Okay, movie review. Okay, I thought it was beauty.
And he's now in cinema hell, where one day we'll all be reunited.
This is me at the Regal Cinema crying as I did through much of the film.